Looking for something to read? Well, these are the books that I've written. Hop on down to the description to find the Amazon links for all 4 of them, and keep your eyes open for more in the future. With that said, on to the video. Hello ladies and gentlemen, I'm the Omni viewer, and I wish this trailer had not aired when I was trying to fall asleep, but such is the way of things. I'm sure it aired at a reasonable time in Japan, but either way, the trailer is out now. The full trailer for Godzilla -1. And, well, let's see what we can discern from it. Okay, so first of all, there are some familiar shots in here from the first teaser, but they're either slightly recontextualized or they're a bit longer. Like that shot of Godzilla bending down to bite onto the train car. That's a longer shot now. Not that it's significantly longer, but, you know, just by a second or two. However, there is a lot of new footage here, both of Godzilla and of the human cast. And the human cast in particular, that's kind of significant because up to this point, we didn't really get a sense of what the human cast was going to be like. We knew that there were going to be a lot of crowds running away, but the previous teaser hadn't really shown us any clue of who the star is, or who the main characters will be if it's an ensemble. Here we finally get that. We don't have names per se, but we can at least recognize certain things. There appears to be an older gentleman who, if I had to guess, is probably a scientist, but I really don't know. We only see him a couple of times. I think that's what he's supposed to be based on or maybe he's a conspiracy theorist, or maybe he's, I don't know. Like I said, we don't really get much context for him. We do get context for who I'm guessing is the male lead, and he appears to be a former Japanese soldier. So there are shots like, there's got to be at least one shot that contextualizes him as coming back home after the war to a very ungrateful mother from the looks of it, calling him a disgrace. And it seems like he's the character we're going to be following the most. We also do get a shot of what I think is supposed to be our female lead, but again, very little context presented for her. It mostly seems like this one guy who's the soldier, or at least the former soldier. This guy does actually provide a couple of interesting lines about what the tone of the movie might be. Because there's one particular line that appears to be said by him where he says, "That monster will never forgive us." That raises all kinds of questions. Never forgive them for what? I mean, there are so many different ways you can interpret that. One way you can interpret it is maybe the Japanese army did something that provoked Godzilla during the war. Or maybe it's like Godzilla's just a vengeful creature that goes after whoever he sees first, like in the original movie. And it doesn't matter whether or not the person he's going after or the people he's going after deserve it, he's just going after them. We're not entirely sure. Again, a lot of context is missing, but then again, it is just a trailer. I don't necessarily want them to give away the whole movie right at the beginning. As for the shots of Godzilla himself, I am happy to say that there is still evidence to suggest he will be more lively than he has been in a lot of the more recent Japanese incarnations. Because, you know, that's kind of been an issue as of late. Whether it was Shin Godzilla, the Polygon Trilogy, or Singular Point, there was a tendency for Godzilla to not really be doing all that much. And one of the things that's got me hopeful about this movie is that when we see Godzilla here, yes, there are a lot of shots of him where he is walking or he is just standing there, but there are also shots of him doing something, lunging at the train, reaching up to grab the battleship, things like that. So I don't necessarily know how lively he's going to be, but he's clearly livelier. So that in itself is significant. It also looks like he's back to his original size range, somewhere in there anyway. Maybe he's a little bit taller than the Showa size range. Maybe he might even be a little bit shorter. I want to say taller, probably maybe in the Millennium range, 55 meters. But I think that's appropriate for this particular setting because you may recall, back in the 40s and 50s, being that tall was significant. These days, where skyscrapers have gotten taller and taller and taller and taller, yes, there is an understanding of why you would want to make Godzilla even bigger in order for him to actually stand out in a city. But back then, that which we considered a skyscraper was more of an exception than a rule. So with city skylines being a lot lower in that time frame, having a monster in Godzilla's size range would actually still get the point across of just how gigantic he is. And, you know, it's ultimately a matter of preference where you prefer Godzilla's size range to be. I think it depends on the context of the film itself and what it's trying to put across. But I think for this particular setting, having him be smaller but still big is gonna work. There's something else I'd like to address that's not necessarily connected to the trailer, but it is still about the movie itself. I have seen people express concerns that the movie might wind up being nationalistic and pro-imperial Japan. You see, for a long time, there was a tendency in Japan to kind of whitewash that period in history and sort of sweep the atrocities committed by the Japanese Empire under the rug and depict themselves sort of as the innocent victims, if you will. They don't talk about how they attacked Pearl Harbor, they don't talk about what happened in Nanking, how POWs were treated, comfort women, anything like that. And as a result, there tends to be a sense of nostalgia that comes around in Japanese culture for that particular era in time. It's a bit understandable because that was also the time when Japan was a military world power, but you know, again, we're talking about a period where they were doing some pretty nasty things. And of course, other nations committed their fair share of atrocities during the war as well. For my country, America, post-Pearl Harbor, we rounded up a bunch of Japanese American citizens because racism and paranoia from the event got the best of us. There were the fire bombings and of course the nukes, which we can still argue to this day whether or not the nukes were really necessary. It's probably a debate that's never going to end. As I said in my analysis of Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, which had this particular element foremost in that film, no country comes out of a war without some blood on its hands. And it's ridiculous to pretend that yours is not. If you do believe that your country is completely innocent of any wrongdoing, then I'd love to know what flavor of Kool-Aid they're serving you. The concern people have is whether or not -1 is going to fall into that particular thematic sense. And based on this trailer alone, it's hard to say. The thing is, I would caution people not to confuse nationalism and patriotism, because there is a difference. The most succinct way I can put it is that nationalism is patriotism without self-awareness. As a patriot, you can love your country, love the freedoms you have within your country, love its culture and everything, still recognize that there are problems, but believe or even take steps to ensuring that those problems can be solved. If you're a nationalist, you just have a fervent love for your country, you think that your country has never done anything wrong, and if they did do something wrong, it wasn't really wrong because your country did it, therefore it's justified. Therein lies the difference between the two. Now, the way we'll be able to tell which category -1 falls into is to ultimately see the movie, of course, but we'll have to see how it depicts certain things. It's set in post-war Japan, which is a point where Japan is at its lowest, arguably. And that alone is not a bad idea. This sense that you can go to Japan during one of its darkest historical periods, ask the question of how things could possibly get worse, and then answer that question by having Godzilla show up, and see what happens from there. That could be interesting. But the way we'll tell if it's nationalistic is if the attitude during that whole film is, why is this happening to us? We've literally never done anything wrong, especially not recently, but I bet those jackboot Americans have something to do with it. That's how we'll be able to tell. Is it gonna happen? I don't know. I'm not saying one way or the other. Now, there are certain lines in this trailer that could be interpreted one way or the other. There's the line, "The government is hiding something from us." Okay, which government is that referring to? Is it referring to the American government, or is it referring to the Japanese government? The line about "the monster will never forgive us." Is it because Godzilla was attacked somehow by the Japanese government? Or is it because Godzilla was designed to hate the Japanese specifically? At this point, again, with so little context, we really can't tell. I mean, heck, there's a line in which one character actually seems to recognize Godzilla, which, if this is a film that takes place before 1954, raises the question of how that could be. Clearly, there's going to be a different sort of mythology, but again, without context, how can we say for certain? So overall, it's clear that the trailer isn't telling us a whole lot, and that's a good thing. There are too many trailers these days that just give away the whole movie, or at least give away enough of the movie that you could pretty much fill in the gaps and guess what's going to happen. And that always irritates me. If given the choice between a trailer that barely tells you anything and a trailer that tells you too much, I'll go with the former. I'd prefer something kind of in the middle, but this particular trailer, I think, gives away just enough without giving away everything. Something else worth noting, it sounds like at the very end, the roar Godzilla emits, clearly the 1954 roar, but altered somehow, remixed or pitched, or they did something to it to make it not just a recycled roar. So that raises the question of if that's the only sound he's going to make, or will this be the first of the Reiwa Godzillas? And I specifically mean by Reiwa the Japanese era, not the MonsterVerse era. Will it be the first of the Reiwa Godzillas to have an original roar? Or will they be taking the classic roars and just sort of manipulating them? Again, we don't know. But overall, I still am intrigued to go see this. Like, if you know my coverage of other Godzilla films that have been coming out as of late, if there are red flags, I say what those red flags are. I saw red flags from the trailer for Godzilla 2014, mind you, and I wound up loving that movie. So -1 isn't necessarily presenting any red flags. In fact, it's got a lot of things in there that really have me intrigued. Plus, you know, I like kaiju movies, I like period pieces, I like the classic film era in general, so having a Godzilla movie set in that time, you've automatically got my attention. But, well, there's only so much I can say, I guess. The shots look good, the music that's playing under it, if it's representative of the music that will be in the movie itself, sounds good. The performances look like they'll be good. I don't know. There's only so long I can ramble before even I start to get bored listening to myself. So I guess I don't have anything else to say at this point. But maybe you do, so hop on down to the comments section and tell me what you thought of this trailer. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer signing off. Thank you all for watching. If you want to see us keep doing what we're doing, you might consider doing all the usual YouTube things, as well as hopping down to the description to find links to DeviantArt, Patreon, Twitter, and links for the different books in the Tales from the Omni Vault universe. Your support is naturally appreciated. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.